Welcome to Living Our Faith podcast. My name is Alana Babineau, and I'm the youth minister at St. Marie Parish and campus minister at Trinity High School right here in Manchester. And I'm joined today by Rachel Statz and Casey Burgess, who are both former Totus Tuus missionaries in our diocese. So Rachel, can you just introduce yourself? What are you currently doing, and where'd you go to school, and how'd you get to where you are now in Totus Tuus?
Yeah, so I did Totus Tuus for the first time in the summer of 2021 for the Diocese of Portland, Maine. And then my second year of Totus Tuus was for this Diocese of Manchester in 2022. And that was the first year it started here. And then I finished college at St. Anselm College. I had a degree in theology, and I graduated in the summer of 2023. And then I flew out to Austria with Franciscan University to study theology of the body. And then that was last summer. And since then, I've been teaching theology of the body to high school girls. And I am a fertility care practitioner with the Creighton model of natural family planning.
That's awesome. Awesome. Cute. All right, Casey.
Yeah. I'm the seminarian for the diocese. I'm in my third year. It's my last year of college seminary at Our Lady of Providence in Rhode Island. After this, God willing, moving on to major seminary, which I'm super excited for. I love this diocese. And I did Totus Tuus this past summer, 2024. It was really a blessing for me to get to see a lot of the diocese, places where I might be in the future, and just really gave me more of a love for the diocese. So
that's cool. Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, we'll be praying for you as you continue to discern. Thank you both so much. So Totus Tuus is a Catholic youth summer program that's devoted to educating and especially evangelizing and catechizing the youth of our diocese. It started in 1987 out in Wichita, Kansas, and has since grown to over 50 dioceses and archdioceses throughout the United States. So can you tell us a little bit more about what's the mission of Totus Tuus? What does Totus Tuus even mean itself?
Yeah, Totus Tuus means totally yours, reference to John Paul II's papal motto, which came from St. Louis de Montfort's total consecration to Jesus through Mary. Totally yours, Jesus through Mary. And everything about Totus Tuus, everything that the kids do, everything that we do, everything about it entirely is about being totally God's through Mary. And that takes the form of something like a summer camp, something like some catechesis, a lot of fun. It's not school, but you do learn a lot. And all of it is about being totally God's. And one thing we teach the first graders is totally yours. And we joke that if we forget what to do and run out of time, like just keep doing that until they get it. But it's because it's true, and kids can understand that in a very straightforward way oftentimes, and they're it's not this big intimidating thing to them to be totally God's. They love it, and we get to introduce that to them and help them with it.
And also, one of the main goals of it is to help people, not just the students, but everyone that we're encountering, help them encounter Christ, right? Like we want them to build this relationship with Christ and have them not just that week that we're there, but like setting them up for a life of just having a relationship and devotion to him, feeling his presence in their life. And like I mentioned, not just the kids, but the host families that we're staying with and the people we're working with and the parents, just having conversations with them, when they're coming to pick up their kid, and they open up to us about their lives and tell us things. And, we really mean it when we say we pray for them. And, still now I started Totus Tuus. I did it the first time 2021, so that this will be 4 years, and I still all the time am praying for my students and their parents, and just like you're really encouraging that relationship, with each other and with Christ, so it's so beautiful.
Yeah, we're all one body of Christ, and we're all called to be totally yours, God, get through Mary.
Totally yours.
It's totally yours. I'm going to use that with all of my teens. Under loud and totally yours.
What are we? Totally yours. Wonderful. So talk to me more about the discernment process and how you said that you started in Diocese of Portland. So I'm interested to hear about how you actually heard about it, because it's not even like it's in your own diocese. Can you expand on that?
I had never really been to Maine except to go to the beach, so it didn't have any connections with anyone out there. But I went to college with a girl who called me and said she did Totus Tuus in the past, and she thought I'd be interested, and I was like, what is Totus? What is this? And she explained the program, and they said they really needed someone. And she asked if she can give my phone number to the vocations director. He called me, I think, like 2 hours later or something like that afternoon. And I just kind of right there on the phone said yes. And I was, didn't have any plans for the summer. I was like, I guess I'll be a waitress, Yeah, like I had no plans. They really needed someone. It was like the beginning of May. So they were looking, and they just needed one female left. And I was like, sure, God, I have no other plans. I don't really have time to discern it. They kind of need an answer by the end of the week. And I was like, yeah, I'll just do it. So.
Yeah. Isn't that funny how the Lord will literally put things right in front of you?
Right.
I'm giving you a choice, but I'm also not really right with the choice. I'm calling you very specifically to do this, and you don't really have time, so you kind of have to say yes.
And you're like, all right. It's like, do you regret it? No, not at all. And it changed my life. And then the next summer, I was so excited that it came to my diocese, because the whole summer that I was up in Portland, I was just praying and hoping that it would come to the Diocese of Manchester. I have 5 brothers, and I was really hoping that they could be part of the program and I could help teach them. And wasn't feasible for them to, go up to Maine for the summer just to be in the program. And then the next year it came. Obviously, I wasn't going to miss that. So
yeah, interesting. All right, so what's your discernment process into Totus Tuus?
I opened my summer assignment letter, and it said, "You will do Totus Tuus this summer." And amen. Obedience is a blessing. It really is, because I just by being a seminarian, by being assigned to things, there are things that this may be the first in many experiences that I would never have thought of for myself, but I never would have gone looking for this or gone to apply. And if it hadn't been assigned to me, yet almost as soon as it was assigned, even before it begun, but certainly once it got going, it became one of those experiences where I can't imagine not having done this. And such a blessing. And when I was telling our host families on the first week, so how'd you decide? And then all the other missionaries would give this amazing story about how God called them. I'd be like, and I was told I am. But in a way that is God calling me, because God speaks through the church. And so the bishop says, when you're doing this, then he can presume that's God's direction for you. So yeah, brief discernment process, just saying yes.
Yeah, and I remember that when we had the cookout to introduce, all the missionaries into our church, and that was your story, was I was told to be here. But praise God, again, the Lord's like, hey, you're going to do this. Yeah, and you want to. So that's wonderful. So on the same subject of being missionaries, what was the actual experience of being a missionary? So what did the day-to-day look like? What did the week-to-week look like for you as missionaries in our diocese?
Should probably talk a little about just what happened every day.
Yeah.
So the morning 9 to 3 is grades 1 through 6, and we get in. We do a bunch of silly songs and stuff at the beginning. We have a couple classes in the morning, all important snack break, recess, lunch, mass every day, which is awesome.
Every day.
Yeah. Mass every day.
That's amazing.
With 1st through 6th graders. And if you think that's impossible, Totus Tuus has been proving that wrong for decades. So it is possible, and it's beautiful, and they do it. Yeah. So mass, lunch, also very important. Plenty of recess time. Summer, they're kids. Play is good.
Yes.
Totus Tuus is not just for kids who like school, which would have been me in the day. But there's plenty of time in Totus Tuus where man, this would have been outside my box as a kid, but probably good for me.
Yeah.
And then high school. You want to talk about high school?
Yeah. So actually, I wanted to, even challenge the day starts before 9 as a missionary. Your host family. We were having breakfast with them. 7 or something in the morning, which was hard for me. Waking up and then you're like, wow, I have to socialize with strangers right now.
Totus Tuus in a nutshell. Wow, I have to socialize with strangers.
Right, at all times. And then we would show up early and we'd pray. And we would do morning prayer and sometimes get a rosary in, maybe. If not, you're going to do it later. And then set up your classroom. You're like, okay, they're coming in 10 minutes. Let me quickly write things on the board and set everything up. And then, like you mentioned, do them the 9 to 3. And then once they leave, it's, back to your cleaning up your classroom. I took many classroom naps on my floor, which is really impressive. If you know me at all, it takes me a long time to fall asleep. I need certain conditions and Totus Tuus. You're asleep on the floor, a wood floor, you have 10 minutes. You're like, okay, great. With your whiteboard eraser in hand, on the floor. And then we would do evening prayer together and a Divine Mercy Chaplet, and you're just spending that time together as a team praying. And that was my favorite parts of the day too, like decompressing, like how was your day, how were your classes, and then like, wow, this day was really hard for me, this class was hard, or like this was such a joyous thing, and that my student said this, and sharing the those day-to-day moments was really great. And then you're back to socializing, you're having dinner with your host family again, and then the high school night, the high schoolers come and it's less structured. There's games and activities and icebreakers. Again, like we mentioned, you really want them to just be encountering Christ. And the best way to do that is building a relationship with someone and just, asking about them and their life and, what they're doing, outside activities and, that kind of stuff. Just getting to know them. Remembering their name is also so important in Totus Tuus. Like we would go home and be like, okay, I remember all my students' dates and, because, there's no better way really, to tell someone that you care and know about them the next day being like, how are you today? And inserting their name, was really so important. But then after like the icebreakers and stuff with the high schoolers, we would have like, the deep catechesis and have these talks with them. And it was different than during the day. It was more like with the younger students, it was more like a whiteboard and like, okay, this is, the 10 Commandments or these are the Beatitudes or whatever. But at night, it was more like giving witness talks and incorporating the 10 Commandments and like, how can we live that out in our lives? And how is it fun and beautiful to live it out, and all these, in sharing your experience as someone who's walking with Christ and someone who's a similar age to them,
Yeah.
When we did it, we're, college students and those students are in high school and they're looking up to us as people that, just a couple years older, and we were in high school a few years ago and we know what it's like and it's awkward and they would crush on so-and-so and how do they deal with it, all these different things. And so just able to relate to them there, but also just like speak the truth and the beauty, how Christ is moving through our lives and different things we've witnessed. And so high school night was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And then ending with night prayer and then, finishing up prayer as a team and, sayonara, see you tomorrow.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, and that's great to see the different structures with those younger students where, all right, let's learn about the faith. Let's learn what the faith is, how to even evangelize and how to even be sons and daughters of God. And then with the high schoolers, it's more of like, all right, the relational aspect, right? And you guys know the faith, and especially, years down the line when some of the current elementary schoolers that are going to Totus Tuus in our diocese now that have reached that high school point, all right, you remember all the stuff you learned from Totus Tuus 5 years ago. Yeah, how you live it out. Here's how we live it out. Here's how you can live it out. And let's have that discussion.
Possible. It's joyous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good life. Mm-hmm. Like when you are totally yours, you're happy and you want to start K10 because this is what the Lord's calling us to do. That's beautiful. So what would you say to someone who's interested in becoming a missionary in this diocese for Totus Tuus?
Do it.
Do it.
If you think that God is calling you to do it, like at least explore it because it's just so good. It's unlike any other opportunity like this that I can think of. It is, you really are, you are totally yours for those weeks. It would have been worth it even just for like the catechesis and the training that we get as missionaries. Like, so before we go to the parishes, we have about a week and a half of intense training, catechesis, because they're not just going to tell you, here's what you need to know to tell the kids. They're going to form you deeply so that you become a reservoir that you can draw on to be able to teach. Not that you just have like the answers to some questions. And it was so good for me. And I was like, here I am doing like basic catechism and my mind is being blown every 5 minutes. So I do some basic truth of the faith that I'd never really thought about before or something like that. But not only that, how to teach different learning styles, different ages. All that aside, the actual missionary experience itself, if you want to know that God actually does love you and provide for you at every moment in a very practical way, like that, there's no better way. I remember going on a pilgrimage a couple of yeyears ago and the director of the pilgrimage saying, we go on pilgrimage to remind us that life is a pilgrimage. And I had a thought that it's similar with missionary life. You spend a specific amount of time as a missionary in a specific way, and that reminds you that as Christians, we are to be missionaries our whole lives. And so while I won't be doing it in the Totus Tuus format all day, I don't know if that would be, but it reorients your life towards mission. Like, wow, how can I not just these kids who are in front of me because it's my job right now, but everyone. How can I love them in such a way that it brings Christ to them? And how can I share the faith with them from not just a wealth of knowledge about it, but from my own life, from my being totally God's? How can I lead other people to that? Like, there's no better way to do that. I imagine similar feet.
You said something at the beginning too, not just in this question about you can imagine your life, something like, right? You can imagine your life not doing Totus Tuus.
Yes.
And I feel the same way. All my friends know I refer to myself, like my life is like, Rachel pre-Totus Tuus, Rachel post. It changed my life so much. I went into college as a history major, as history secondary ed. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was like, I'll be a history teacher. By the time I finished Totus Tuus, I went back that school year and I switched to a theology major. And I had, been born and raised Catholic my whole life. My parents did a great job teaching the faith, but just, that aspect of encountering Christ, like you said, knowing truly how much he loves you and that he will provide for you every moment. You're like, oh my gosh, we don't have lunch today. What are we going to do? And then someone walks down the hall, is like, we have extra sandwiches.
Absolutely.
He always provides. Wow.
Right. It's really a radical lifestyle to live and it completely changes your life. Like I've been, haven't done it in a couple of years and still all the time I wake up when I have a chance, I do morning prayer, and I learned that from Totus Tuus. I never would have thought or known. I didn't know about Liturgy of the Hours, and just having such a deep relationship with the Blessed Mother after Totus Tuus, I consecrated myself to her, wearing my miraculous medal all the time, just, praying for her intercession, like all these different things, this personal relationship that I think a lot of people don't get growing up as kids. You're taking a mass and you're taught about the faith, and even though my parents did a great job, they're watching. But, it's just so different to have young people come to you, these young college students, and tell you like, you can have this, and the same thing we were saying like in missionary. We had the people who taught us like, you can have this really deep relationship with Christ, and you're like, yes, I want this, and it just radically changes your life.
That's amazing. Yeah. So it sounds like you guys are totally yours. Yeah, we got the success there.
Trying to be.
But trying to be. Exactly. It's a constant journey. And what I'm curious about is how did you see the change in, let's start with the younger students. Okay. So those elementary age students, how did you see that change beginning of the week compared to the end of the week with them being totally God's?
When I went to the Diocese of Portland, which I didn't see this in Manchester because it was the first year we did it. But Portland, it was the third year we had done it. And the parish coordinators had watched the kids grown, which I hadn't seen them because I just met them for the first time. And there were a couple students that were because of Totus Tuus, were baptized. Like really
Bro,
yeah.
Praise God. That's amazing.
Really incredible.
Yeah.
That, I'm thinking of this one family, really, really devout Catholics, and then they had a neighbor, was a little boy the same age. They would play together on, in the street, bikes and stuff. And in the summer and, just hang out all the time. His father had passed away and he was not Catholic and had kind of a hard life. And they invited him to do Totus Tuus with them because he spent every moment with, these other boys, in that family. And so he said, sure, I don't want to miss a week hanging out with you guys. And they got elementary school and he came. And by the end of the week, he was begging his mom to be baptized. And then when I came the following year to meet him, he had been baptized and he was my best student. He was so excited about the faith. He had so many questions. After class, he would come to me and, Miss Rachel, what about this? What about this? And, what does this mean? And where can I read more once you guys leave? And I can't wait till next year. Can't you come back more? And just so incredible. And I believe his mom was in the process of becoming baptized too, which is really incredible.
Wow.
And there's so many stories of that where the kids are learning and they just see the truth of the faith and the beauty of wow, this is incredible. And they bring it home and they're like, Mom, or Dad, can we say a rosary? And, the parents may be like, I don't really know how to say a rosary, but the kids are like, I do, I can show you now, There are so many situations of kids saying to their parents, I had so many kids come up to me and say, my mom and dad, when we went over the commandments and the third, keep holy Sabbath, and come up to me and saying, I don't go to Mass every Sunday, is that a sin? And trying to explain to them that they can't drive themselves to Mass, right? Their parents take them. And I would encourage them, ask your mom and dad, can you take me this someday? And sometimes they would come back and say, Mom said we can go to Mass on Sunday. We haven't gone in like a year, but she said, if you want to go, And I think a lot of times parents assume the kids don't want to go. They're going to be loud. They're going to complain, But then when the kids are asking, like begging for, to encounter Christ, then the parents, fall after, which is
It's like, how do you not want to like encourage them to do that? Because it's a good thing. It's true. It's beautiful. And that the children see that and they have those roots that are then planted in their hearts.
Yeah.
And then it continues to grow because they're being fed by the graces of our God. And then those that they're hanging around, and then they're bringing their family into the church. That's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. So it's a transformation and maybe some of the younger kids that you've seen happen from Totus Tuus.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about Totus Tuus, like I think I mentioned earlier, it's not summer school. It's not just for kids who love school. You do learn a lot, but I had a lot of kids this summer who I would say, yes, school is probably not their favorite thing in the world. And they're good kids. And that's the thing, like one unfortunate thing about the way school is in the world today is if it's just not in your personality to sit still and listen for a long time, then you're just a fat kid. And I saw the way that had gotten like ingrained personally, where like these kids are now internalizing I'm bad because I have lots of energy, which only makes them more like hyperactive and everything. And there were times when the beauty of Totus Tuus is that in the break between class, you can just like play basketball or run sprinting races with this kid who can't sit still in your class, and then immediately go into class. And it's the same, like now that it's the same missionary that was just running sprints with them is now teaching them. It's so much different from school. And I had so many moments of like they said something in class that just blew my mind, and I'm like, okay, so there is something so good going on in there. And Totus Tuus gives an opportunity for that to happen that like maybe normal, I don't know, parish CCD or something would.
Yeah.
It's also got plenty for kids who are super curious and want to sit and listen and learn. I'll add plenty of that too. But
we're figuring out ways to teach them, not just in the classroom, right? Like it's out during recess when you're doing, right, like all these little lessons. I remember something you said sparked this memory. My first year, I had taught a class. It was on we were doing the 10 Commandments and on like freedom and how really like having these rules and structures and following the commandments really makes you free. You're not, because otherwise you're a slave to sin, right? The society and world tells us that following these rules makes you just like a slave to the rules, which isn't true. And so I remember I had these two kids, they were brother and sister, and the boy was like 8 and the sister was 12. She was a little bit older, and they were playing basketball together. So 3 of us playing basketball, like knockout. And she was losing, even though she was older, and her little brother was doing so great at basketball, and she was upset, and she was like, we should just get rid of the rules. Like, let's just, like shoot some hoops. And like, she was kind of frustrated. And he was like, don't you know, like rules set us free, And I was just laughing. So it was so funny. He was like, cause he was one, but it was funny that he was like, no, like rules make us free. We have to follow the rules. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you're listening. So it's cool that it's not just, it's like it's applied to like, and they apply it, it's not like we're, just forcing, lectures on them. It's finding different ways to teach them. A lot of our class time is games. You play games, and I remember I did like Jeopardy, the 10 Commandments with a bunch of 3rd grade students, and I had 2 teams, and they loved it. And I played the Jeopardy music, and you're just doing fun things, and they remember and they learn it, better that way.
Yeah, because they're learning in a more engaging way.
Right.
It's the same with high schoolers, right? Yeah, as I deal with them, and you guys have dealt with them as well. It's like you still have to keep everything shifting because you have to make sure that what we are teaching you is also being processed. And sometimes we have to like do things and play soccer on that final day of Totus Tuus in order to really instill in their minds, no, we are totally yours. Right. And, one of like my favorite stories that I heard from our parish is during one of the days that you were doing adoration with the younger students, and Father was walking through adoration. What did Jesus say to you? And there's, I guess, a little boy that said, Jesus told me to stop picking on my sister. And then there's another one that said, Jesus told me that he loves me. And it's little moments like that where, like, okay, they're forming this relationship with Christ, right? And it's centered through the Eucharist. And that's another thing that I I love about Totus Tuus is that it's really incorporating all aspects of the faith. Like what you were saying, you're teaching the 10 Commandments, but then you're exposing them to daily mass and adoration. And especially with the teens, that we have adoration that happens in the evening and confession. I remember this past summer, that was the most beautiful thing, was seeing probably 80% of the room of teens wait in line for confession, because they learned about the graces received and the need to be forgiven from our Father for what we've done.
And they're desiring.
They desire it.
On it,
Yeah. And it's absolutely beautiful and a very moving thing to see from the parish perspective as well. So just to close it out, I want to know, what would you say to a family that's thinking about sending their student, and why this is such an important thing to incorporate for parents as educating their children in the faith and raising their kids in the Catholic faith?
I think one of my favorite parts was like bringing the students to Christ. You know, like we're having them encountering Christ like in the classroom and through our interactions, right? We hope and we pray for ourselves that every person we interact with, they're encountering Christ through us. But like physically bringing them to adoration. And I would have my little kindergarten students like draw pictures for Jesus. You know, we bring them to the chapel, or we write like a little, you know, like, I love Jesus because blank, and they fill in the word, you know, whatever. And just so many, like you said, different little, you know, things that they would hear, you know, Christ speak to them, or just like the peace they would feel. And I know I had one student once, he was in 2nd grade, and I sat next to him during Mass, and I just hear like little sniffles. And I was like, what's wrong? You know, like, why are you crying? And he was like, Jesus died for me. And I was like, yeah, he did, you know, and then he just starts sobbing. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, it's going to be okay. And he's like, you know, yay big, so small. And he's just sobbing. And he was like, I wish I could have died instead of Jesus. I'm like, he just had such a deep understanding of like how much God loves him and the pain he went through. And like, he's like, I would, you know, take it on instead of him. And like, it was just like so profound. And, you know, like, and I think, like, as a missionary, like, you think you're going in to, like, evangelize the kids. And really, they're going, you know, they're evangelizing you, and your faith is growing because of them, you know. And so I would encourage any, you know, parent thinking about sending, you know, their kids, or, you know, any student, high school student. I think the other thing, too, with the high school students, I know for myself, like growing up, like anytime someone would go up to the pulpit and like announce like, oh, this Saturday there's going to be, you know, a youth something, my dad would always like nudge me and my sibling, whoever was in that age bracket of a school, like whatever. And I would always be like, no, like don't, you know. And
I definitely have something.
Yeah, like no, like Dad, I was in 8th grade last year, like, you know, like now I'm too old for that of it, you know. But like for the high school students, you know, I don't know if they're watching podcasts, but if they're listening, you know, like really encouraging high school students to come. And so many of the high school students would tell us that, like, they would show up and you'd ask why they're there. And they're like, yeah, my mom made me, you know. But by the end of the week, they're like, this was the best week of my summer. And I can't wait to come back next year. And
that's great.
You know, and I know for myself as a high school, middle school person, I would not have gone, you know.
Yeah.
And so just really encouraging them to, you know, bring themselves through it, because it's just so transformative.
Yeah, it really is transformative. And I remember that Thursday night, the last night of high school, going into the church one last time to do night prayer, and then hearing every single teen sing the Salve Regina at the end of night prayer, like, totally gave me goosebumps. And, you know, as the youth minister, I see them in a you know, different time, different space, and then to see the transformation, because truly of the work that you guys are doing with them, where they just desire to pray, they desire to sing praises to Our Lady and hope that she will intercede for them and their needs and their struggles, is truly transforming into lives that are Totus Tuus, totally yours. And yeah, what's one thing that you would try to encourage families and even parishes to have Totus Tuus in the first place?
Yeah, it's really hard. There is no like catch-all solution to everything program in the church. We know that. That's not like no one thing fixes everything. But Totus Tuus is really incredibly like well-rounded and versatile, and just so many facets of goodness involved that like you were saying, the kid who came, whose friends were coming, even if he never, it's amazing that he got baptized and like that's just unbelievable. But even if that never would have happened, he still would have had a great week playing games and like it's just fun to run around the parking lot. It's good. God smiles upon that. It's just good to learn about the faith, to pray. All of these things are just good. And there's lots you can do in a summer, but there's so much goodness in something like Totus Tuus that, like, as we've been talking about, it's just 1 week. And one final thought, like from the missionary perspective, is we show up. It takes us till Tuesday to know where all the doors are, the light switches, know anyone's names. And then by Friday, every Friday, it's like, I can't believe we have to leave.
Yeah.
And then we do it again. And then we have relatively no idea what happens afterwards. But as we've seen, as you probably see at the parish, just like the fruit from it, one, it's just a great week in itself. Two, the fruit from it over time. Like, we have no idea what this does. You have no idea what 1 week in the summer can do for a kid. And they remember.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah, I had that. Like, so you got to see the third year in Maine.
Right.
And the first year in Manchester. So me getting to see the third year in Manchester, kids, you're like, oh yeah, I remember this from last year. That was the best. So, and getting excited for something coming later in the week or something like that. They remember, they soak it in, such sponges.
Yeah, really.
It's so good. Yeah. So fortunate to have been given the opportunity to do it.
All right. Well, Rachel and Casey, thank you so much for sharing your experiences about being missionaries in Totus Tuus and the effect that it had on the students, on yourselves, and on parish life. And I want to invite anyone who's interested, whether you're a family, you're a parish, or even you're a college student who would like to be a missionary, to visit the diocesan website, where there's a Totus Tuus page, and you can learn more about that process. So thank you so much for watching. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast. And Happy New Year. God bless you all.